Today we're going to be working on solving one-step equations with multiplication and division. You'll need a pencil and note 12. Here we go. So first, let's start by numbering our notes. Notes number 12, and go ahead and get started. So we've already talked about what inverses mean. So the inverse of multiplication is division, and the inverse of the inverse of division is multiplication. Now, our rules are still the same when solving these equations. We'll still put a line on the middle of the equal sign. What we do to one side of the equal sign, we do to the other. All those things are still the same because our job is still to isolate the variable on one side of the equation. So let's take a look at our first example. Solve for y. So we have 12y equals 84. Because the 12 is right next to the y, they are being multiplied together. So the inverse of multiplication is division. So we are going to divide both sides by 12. 12 divided by 12 is y, or 1y, and 84 divided by 12 is 7. Then we'll rewrite our original, substitute our solution, and do our check. Let's try some out. Here's A, line down the middle of our equal sign. Negative 5x equals 30. So you have to think, what times negative 5 is going to be positive 30? Well, let's see. The negative 5 and the x are being multiplied together. So the inverse is to divide both sides by negative 5. Negative 5x divided by negative 5 is 1x, or just x. Equal sign stays on the line. 30 divided by negative 5 is negative 6. For our check, we'll write our original equation. We'll substitute our solution. A negative times a negative is a positive. And so our solution checks out. Take a look at B. Line down the middle of your equal sign. What are you trying to solve for? The variable j. What's with the variable j? The negative 2. So what's happening between the negative 2 and the j if they're right next to each other? Multiplication. So the inverse would be division. So we'll divide by that coefficient. Equal sign stays on the line. On the left here, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 46 divided by 2. If you're not sure, go ahead and do a little bit of division on the side here. And we have 23. Negative 2j divided by negative 2 is 1j, or just j. So here's our solution. And let's do our check. Negative times a positive is a negative, so it checks out. Now let's take a look at C. What do you think the most common wrong answer to C is? Did you think it was 8? Yeah, 8 is the most frequent wrong answer. So a lot of students just look at 3 and 24 and think, oh, 24 divided by 3 is 8. But let's actually see what happens here. What are you solving for? M. What's being multiplied by the m? 24. So what do we have to divide by? 24, exactly. Now, if you look here, 3/24, 3 divided by 24, is a proper fraction, which means its value is less than 1. So it cannot be 8. Now, if we said it was 8, let's see what the check would look like. So if we said that m was 8 and we substituted 8 in there, is 24 times 8 3? No way. So your check is actually to see if you're right. Now we have this fraction 3/24. What could we simplify by? Well, 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 24 8 times. And so what we have as our solution is 1/8. Now, if we do our check, 3 equals 24 times 1/8. The denominator on the 24 is 1. We can cross simplify. 8 goes into 8 once. 8 goes into 24 3 times. And there we have 3 equals 3. Now let's take a look at the second page. So flip over. Let's take a look at some practice problems together. Number 1, what would you have to divide by here? Did you say 3? You'd be right. What's negative 48 divided by 3? If you're not sure, set up the divisor and the dividend and do a little division. Did you get 16? Well, let's do the check and see. So we have negative 48 equals 3p. So negative 48 equals 3 times our solution, which was 16. What's 3 times 16? It's 48. But does negative 48 equal positive 48? It doesn't. Did we make a mistake on our solution? We did. This should be negative 16. So this would be negative here. Now, what do you think the coefficient on number 2 is? What's the coefficient in front of the y if there's a negative there? That's right, it's negative 1y. So what would we need to divide by? Negative 1. So what's our solution? Y equals positive 9. Good. And let's do our check. Negative y equals negative 9. We're going to use parentheses to make sure we're doing this correctly. And it checks out. You do number 3 on your own. Solve and check. Now let's go ahead back to the first page. Let's talk about solving equations that start off with division. So example 4 says solve for n. Well, if we look at the variable, n is being divided by 8, right? A fraction is just division. Well, what's the inverse of division? Multiplication. So we're going to multiply by the denominator over 1. Because then 8 divided by 8 is 1. 8 divided by this 8 is 1. And we're left with 1n. Now, whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. And we end up with our solution and our check. So let's try some practice problems. Line down your equal sign. The variable and the denominator are being divided. The inverse is to multiply. So I like to do it by putting the whole equation in parentheses and multiplying on both sides by the denominator over 1 here. So 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 4 once, leaving us just with x. Equal sign stays on the line. Negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. And so here's our solution. For our check, we have x divided by 4 equals negative 5. If I substitute our solution in for x, negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. So that checks out. You try number 2 on your own. Solve and check. Now, F, we see that we have the division symbol. So the first thing we're going to do is rewrite it as a fraction. Since R comes first, it's the dividend or the numerator. Since 12 comes second, it's the denominator or the divisor. And now our problem is set up just like before. Line down the middle of your equal sign. Put the whole equation in parentheses, and let's multiply by the denominator over 1. The whole point is that our denominators divide out, leaving us with R equal to 60 as our solution. And we'll do our check as well. So we have R divided by 12 equals 5. R was 60. And so we end up with a correct solution. Let's practice a few more on the next page. So again, we see number 4 set up with division, with the division symbol, line down our equal sign, -9, equal sign stays on the line. V divided by 7, so we will multiply by the denominator. 7 times -9, -63, leaving us with 1V, or just V as our solution. Our check. We have -63 as our variable substitution. And so once again, we did this problem correctly. You try number 5 on your own. We're going to go through 3 different ways of doing number 6 in class. So we're going to skip that one as well. Go ahead to the next page. Write the word sentence as an equation, then solve. A number divided by -9 is 16. So what was a number? That's right, it's a variable. Divided by, so we're dividing by -9. What does is mean again? That's right, equals. So a number, we can pick one, maybe A, divided by -9 equals 16. What should we do here? Should we divide? Should we multiply? By what? Good job. We're going to multiply by -9 over 1 on both sides. -9 goes into -9 once. -9 goes into -9 once, leaving us with A equals 16 times -9. Well, a positive times a negative is a negative. It's okay if you don't know 16 times 9 in your head. So we will work that out. And here we have our solution. B, the product of 15 and a number is -75. Write and solve this equation. More practice to come in class. See you next time.